welcome. My name is Stacy Fritz, and welcome to our next episode on Food for Thought. I am very excited to have Heather Cooan back with us from Soul to Soul Nutrition, and we're going to be talking about the truth about juicing. I am thrilled to be bringing this information with Heather to you because for many reasons, but we just had our lovely dinner for Believe Big last Thursday, and one of the things that we did in the beginning during the opening or just the meet and greet was a little bit of a juice sampling. And Heather, we got an incredible amount of questions, a lot of interest in this gorgeous juices that Pure Raw Juice had provided. And I have written some of those questions down, but more importantly, I'm really excited to hear from you, the expert, everything you know about juicing, because we do get lots of questions, not just from the dinner, but in general. So juicing is all the rage, and I look forward to hearing how you break it down for us today. So take it away, Heather.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me back. I'm super excited. This is a topic that I talk about often, and there's lots of nuance when it comes to juicing, and that's where we specialize at Soul to Soul, is in the nuance. So we're just going to go through all the pieces. So
it's going to be
I figured we would start with the literature. What does the literature actually say?
A lot, apparently.
A lot. And you'll notice a lot of these slides are dense with text, and so we will provide them to the audience, of course. I tried to highlight the things that were most important.
I think you're going to really surprise our listeners today, Heather. I just have a funny feeling.
I think so too. There's lots of nuance around juice. Yes. So first of all, we have to differentiate between fruit juice and vegetable juice. Now, fruit juice actually has been linked to not a reduced risk of cancer, but an increased risk of cancer.
Wow.
And a lot of this literature is a little different because it's not necessarily in the body with all of the chemical reactions that happen in the body. A lot of this stuff is done in a petri dish or in an animal study. And so it's a little bit of a emerging area, if you will.
And let me just stop you real quick, Heather. This is true about all the topics that we talk about, and which is one of the reasons why it's so important to us at Believe Big to have folks like you, the experts on, because we know in particular nutrition, the science is always changing, the information is always changing. So before you even get going, we have to say, this is what we know today. It's different than what we knew a year or two ago. So I feel like just to settle the conversation down, because we automatically don't want people tuning in or tuning out based on their love of juice. This is just information. You do with it what you want to do with it. And just know that Heather is the bomb when it comes to research information. So please just know that I'm leaning in too.
And that's really what it's about. I don't want to lose anybody with this information because we are going to talk about how to juice appropriately based on all of this nuancy information. But there was a meta-analysis of 71 observational studies that happened in 2021. They actually found that fruit juice and sugar-sweetened beverages, but fruit juice specifically, actually had a positive association with cancer risk and mortality. And then in 2023, we dug in a little bit more, and it's around all of the signaling that happens in the body. People are probably thinking, oh, she's going to say that sugar feeds cancer. It's not that simple. It's more about the terrain, because we look at the rest of the body and the soil that the disease has taken root in.
Yes.
And so we look at things like insulin and IGF-1, and these are growth factor signaling, and something called uric acid, which actually is a byproduct of fructose metabolism. That is basically a measure of oxidative stress, and it can cause stress on those little mitochondria that we need to work well when we're dealing with everything, but specifically within the context of cancer. It does not yet appear in the literature that we have anything that supports that juicing actually treats, prevents, does anything for cancer itself. It's more of an association, and a lot of this is observational. So again, the literature here is a lot of questionnaires and gathering information based on people's recounting of the way that they live and how they interact with things like juice. So these studies also don't distinguish between commercial juices, which almost always have some added sugar, whether it's from an apple or actual sugar, versus a fresh juice that you juiced at home. They don't differentiate portion size or added ingredients or pasteurized or raw or any of these other elements. And so it can be very difficult to get clear about what is beneficial and what is not beneficial. And so this is where we really root into the terrain in the body.
The trouble is that you have your folks that are touting that juicing cured my cancer. And again,
Yes.
not to pick on anyone, but this again goes back to the original comment that I think you said last episode too, is that we cannot homogeneously or spread like this is a definite for this situation. This is that everybody's body is different and that we need to make sure that we address quote unquote terrain for the person.
Yes. And we're going to get into genetics. There's some big genes around this stuff. But first, I want to honor anybody who is and has been juicing and feels that this is appropriate for them. After we get through this material, it still may be appropriate for you. And that's okay. That's great. Especially if you believe that it's beneficial for you. There's a lot of power in that.
I love this slide, Heather. I love this slide.
More tools and understanding nuance so you can make better decisions for yourself.
Agreed.
Because it's all about you and what is appropriate for you.
Love it.
So, like you were talking, let's talk about how this whole juicing phenomenon caught on in the cancer space to start with. Testimonials is one piece, right? So if someone makes it through cancer and they're thriving and they're doing really well and juicing was part of their plan, they talk about it and everybody learns that it was involved in their plan. Now, do we know if it was that or if it was the combination of things they did? Was it an early stage cancer? Was it an advanced cancer? We don't know about all of the details. And that's where that nuance is. But those testimonials are really powerful.
They are.
It's also easy to deal with juice when you're going through treatment. If you have digestive issues, if you're feeling crappy, if you have any kind of mucositis or sores in the mouth, it can be easy to tolerate. So I understand why people want to juice. And then, of course, the wellness industry amplifies things. There's a business to be made around juicing. And so when it started to, in the 1990s and the 2000s, get popular with juice bars and commercial juicers, and QVC commercials are running through my brain right now. Everyone was selling these big juicers. So it became a trend in the health space. But the other thing is we need to be empowered in our, I'm going to say, adventure or journey through cancer.
Yeah.
And when you sit down and you have all of this beautiful organic produce that you have sourced from your local farm and you juice it through the juicer, it feels like you're taking action. It feels like you're empowered.
Fascinating.
And so all of these reasons are why juicing caught on, in addition to some very popular approaches like Gerson, which we'll talk about next.
Yes.
But the literature just doesn't match the two in terms of juicing equals positive outcomes in cancer. And a lot of this is because the whole food matrix is missing, which is that fiber conversation, which we're going to get into as well. Are there other reasons why you think cancer and juicing went hand in hand? Are there other reasons?
I think you hit them. And I think that this is, again, I think that you're opening the conversation wide open to part of the problem with all of the protocols is that some things that we know and other things, and then we attach our beliefs and our opinions to what is resonating with us at the time. But the purpose of the show is doing exactly what you're doing, is to give our listeners the most recent, solid, research-based information, which is what I want. And sometimes that doesn't feel good to people to hear that, but it's okay. Because the more empowered we are, the more inspired we are to make the better decision. And again, you're not saying don't do it. You're just saying make sure you understand the things wrapped around it.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And it can be, as we're alluding to, it can be one of those very strongly felt topics, juicing.
Yes.
Same thing with vegan diets, which we'll touch on here in a minute. These things can be very embedded into identity and embedded into belief, not just a nutrition protocol or a tool. And so we want to be respectful of that, but also provide all of the pieces of the puzzle that we have currently. So let's talk about Gerson, because Gerson is interesting. Did you know that the original Gerson actually included fresh calf's liver?
Oh, no.
I'd rather drink a cup of carrot juice. I understand.
Oh.
So back in the 1920s and the 1950s, the original Gerson protocol included some vegetable juice, fresh vegetable juice, but a significant amount of raw calf's liver. And that's important because B12 is very difficult to get from plant foods only. It's just not available, but it's really available and bioavailable, like easy for us to absorb and assimilate in liver. And so a lot of that early research and success of Gerson is actually coming from the original protocol before the apple and the carrot juice was included.
Wow.
Everyone's blown away when they find this out. And I kind of think that Gerson's daughter, Charlotte, who took over after him, may have been a little traumatized having to eat fresh calf's liver. So I understand switching over. But in the 1970s, there were a couple of infections that were associated with eating raw liver. And so the FDA actually decided this is not okay. You can't be doing this. And they had to take it out. And so that's when they switched over to 10 to 13 glasses of carrot and apple juice.
Unbelievable.
And I was shocked when I did the math. 10 to 13 glasses of apple and carrot juice, there's 183 to 238 grams of sugar. That is the equivalent of drinking 5 to 6 cans of Coke, just a regular Coke can.
Isn't that unbelievable?
A day. And I see people coming off of the Gerson protocol, coming from some of the cancer clinics like Hope for Cancer in Mexico, where they're doing some of these heavy plans. And we see craziness on the labs with inflammation and blood sugar and other issues. And so just know, like carrot, apple, there's a lot of sugar. It adds up. It adds up real fast. And in the UK, Cancer Research UK actually classifies Gerson as unproven, alternative, and there's several documented serious side effects. So infections, changes in blood mineral levels. When we're having that much juice, we can actually cause our electrolytes to get out of balance and get a little bit crazy. And it hasn't been studied. And I know that we're not always going to hang the hat on nothing is okay if it hasn't had a randomized control trial, but it's all of the pieces together that add up. So I would be cautious about Gerson, or maybe do a modified Gerson if this is calling to you. But really what it comes down to is what's your baseline.
Yeah.
If you're pre-diabetic or dealing with insulin resistance or have type 2 diabetes or type 1 or any blood sugar handling issues, maybe we need to adjust this juicing situation if you're going to follow something like Gerson.
Agreed.
All right, let's talk about fiber. And it's not just fiber. I'm talking about this whole thing called the plant matrix, the whole plant matrix. And what actually happens is it's not just the fiber itself, but the way that the phytonutrients and polyphenols are suspended and attached to each other. When you eat the whole food, whether it's a leaf or an apple or a carrot, for example, then you're getting everything bound in balance. And it's a slow release mechanism, not just the sugar, but all of the polyphenols and the antioxidants come with it. And it's like a time released for us to actually get and use each of those phytonutrients and the polyphenols. So
much sense. Yeah.
We think we're doing a good job because we know that some of these things are good for us. So in concentrated amounts, they should be even better for us. But what we forget is, oh shoot, when my blood sugar goes way up, it causes my nervous system to enter fight or flight. When I'm in fight or flight, it turns my digestion off. So we're not really absorbing and utilizing those nutrients all the time either.
It's amazing.
But in a whole food matrix, they're suspended. And so it's calming to our nervous system and everything can come through in a time released capacity.
Yet another plug for eat the whole food.
Whole foods, always whole foods. And the microbiome is also something that we need to think about because the microbiome, those gut bugs, they need those prebiotic fibers that we find usually in vegetables. Things like pectin that you find in the whole apple. These things are going to feed your gut bugs. And we need those guys because most of our cells that run the immune system are living in and around the gut. What do they say? Like 70 to 90% of your immune system is in your gut. It's actually surrounding your gut because your gut wall is only one cell thick. So it's like little soldiers everywhere. But we want those metabolites and we want that immune activation in the gut. And then, of course, slows sugar. I think most of us know about that piece. but it also supports elimination. So fiber is what kind of gets things moving, bulks up the stool.
Yeah.
Activates digestion. So when we're chewing, people don't realize that digestion is a north to south process.
Yes.
It starts actually here in the brain. It starts with looking at the food and smelling the food and hearing the sizzle of the food and taking all of that in with your senses, which gets your salivary juices going. And then the chewing mechanism helps to prime the gastric juices to get ready to receive and then break apart and absorb all of those nutrients.
So by drinking it, we're bypassing all of that beginning part of
Totally.
digestion. Yes.
Yep. And then, of course, there's the whole topic of something called an anti-nutrient. And we'll get into what these are a little bit more, but plants come with their own self-defense mechanisms in chemical form. And for some of us, particularly those of us with autoimmunity along with cancer, it can be kind of irritating to the immune system and the gut. And so it kind of depends on the person here. They also bind some of the good stuff that we need. And so it can make things not bioavailable for us. So when you're juicing, you're getting concentrated sugar, bypassing chewing, getting concentrated anti-nutrients, which can irritate the immune system. And then there's the pesticide piece. So even when you're sourcing, organic does not mean chemical free. Organic means a class of pesticides and things that are not synthetic, if you will.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean no chemicals. Now, if you have the capacity to garden in your own garden, you know what's in your soil, you know how the minerals are in the soil, you know what's on your veggies, and you want to juice them, that's wonderful. But that's 3 of us.
Yeah.
And if you're a gardener, because I'm a gardener, if you think about the amount of effort it takes to grow a glass of juice, it's a lot of time.
And again, I can't help but think this slide is really powerful, because if I'm coming in the middle of this webinar and I'm looking at this, it looks like we're saying for sure, don't do this. However, the way I'm reviewing it now is the last bullet point on the right-hand side removes the therapeutic foundation. I'm looking at opportunity there, because all we're saying is a very narrow focus on this juicing conversation. For some people it might work. For some there might be a good argument that if you can't get it whole food wise, can we get it this way? But we're missing the best part of the conversation, which is that therapeutic, the foundational piece from the plant, from beginning to end, and all the different pieces of that produce, if you will, that, and all the positives. We don't want to eliminate the opportunity to have the disease prevention, fighting phytochemicals, because we've juiced them out. And so I'm looking at this, and I hope that the folks that are listening look at this like an opportunity to come back to whole foods and look at all the other things you are getting by having the juice and all the other parts.
Yeah, the whole, always the whole. Absolutely.
All right, let's see what you got next.
We just don't think, right? We think that if we concentrate, it's better, but we don't realize
and fast is best, and the fact that we're all so busy. There's a huge. You and I are on the same page. We talked about this before we went live. It's a good argument for somebody who's trying to do the right thing. It's just that you got to look at the whole picture here.
Yeah, and you got to think of what's the capacity to receive. Yeah, like too much into the body, you're not going to be able to receive it. And the blood sugar piece is exactly that. We know from the Warburg effect and all of Thomas Seyfried's work that there is a sugar fermentation process that happens with cancer cells. Their metabolism is essentially broken. And it's oversimplified. I got to get on my soapbox for a minute because I work in the ketogenic space as well. And I just think that people have an oversimplified idea that if I stop eating all sugar, my cancer will just go away. It unfortunately isn't that simple. Just because there's evidence that there is a fueling element here, we have to look at the big picture, because our cancer cells are our cells that have gone bonkers. And so they can actually hijack anything that's good for us as well. And so it's not as simple to say just remove. So I'm not going to go down the pathway of we don't want this because if you're juicing, you're feeding cancer. It's not that simple. It's not that simple. But if we break it down and we look at insulin and IGF-1, just these 2 elements, these are lab markers that we would measure in blood. these can be drivers. So insulin is what your pancreas produces in response to too much sugar in the blood, because more than, get this, 2 teaspoons of table sugar in the blood is actually toxic. And so the pancreas will kick in with insulin to remove it, shuttle it into the muscles and into our fat tissue. And as that insulin climbs up and up, now we're getting all kinds of growth signaling happening in the body. And IGF-1, or insulin growth factor 1, is one of those things that we would measure to look at growth signaling. And this is a measure that we watch really closely at Soil to Soul, and it has actually been implicated in things like metastatic disease with breast cancer. And it also has a tendency to jack up hormones. So if you have an estrogen receptor positive cancer, this is definitely important for you to pay attention to. So again, not the juice, the impact of the juice on the body. And that has to do with what is your baseline to start with.
Yeah.
Uric acid, I mentioned earlier. So fructose is a different kind of sugar. It's got to go through the liver in order to process. So I hear people mistakenly say things like, it's different. It's sugar from fruit. It's not going to hit your blood sugar. It hits your blood sugar. There's just a delay in how it hits your blood sugar. So for those folks out there using CGMs, continuous glucose monitors, and you have a piece of fruit or some fructose, you may actually see your blood sugar be fine and then have a big jump, or be fine and then have a big drop, depending on how your blood sugar handling is operating at the time. But fructose, when it is metabolized, creates something called uric acid. And uric acid, if it stacks up, can drive inflammation, it can drive oxidative stress, it can damage vasculature. Vasculature is really important, specifically in cancer, because all of us who have had cancer end up with weird blood coagulabilities. It's just something that happens in the process. So we don't want too much uric acid in the way. Cancer also adapts and moves and uses multiple systems. So again, it's not that simple as just remove sugar. And there is new literature coming out, I guess not as new now, we've known some of this since 2013, where if insulin is super elevated, it can actually protect some of the cancer cells from things like radiation. So some of the treatments can be impacted if your insulin is too high. This goes for both chemotherapy and radiation, but more of the literature is centered around radiation and insulin handling. So it's important to consider blood sugar. This is one of the big pieces that people, they know, but they don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Fascinating. Tell us some good news.
We're getting there. We're getting there. This one I've never seen actually talked about except for Dr. Nasha. So copper is the raw material for something called angiogenesis. So again, cancer is our own cells gone bonkers. So we have to consider all of our normal healthy mechanisms. If you were to cut yourself, cut your hand, your body would create new blood supply to bring nutrients to heal that cut. Angiogenesis is what that's called. Normal healthy process. But cancer cells can hijack that process and they can create new blood supply to bring nutrients to progress. And one of the raw materials that can push that process forward is copper. So copper angiogenesis is well documented in the literature. And if we're juicing things like spinach, kale, beet greens, carrots, ginger, celery, these things are concentrated copper in our juices. So we want to be very careful. Notice that beets, carrots, some of these things are also high in sugar. So as I'm alluding to the good stuff, we're going to show you guys how to juice to avoid some of these things. Now, if you are working with someone who's terrain trained and you're measuring your copper and your ceruloplasmin, which is another blood marker that we would look at, maybe you can afford a little bit of copper in your juice. But if those things are high, we don't want to add more to the mix. So whole food again. Yes. You don't want to concentrate iron. And this is also where we get into
our takeaway today, Heather, is that
yeah,
we're gonna keep drinking the juice, but we're gonna drink it from our whole foods.
Yep, absolutely. And this is also where we get into trouble with things like chlorella and spirulina and some of these things that people really gravitate to when they're dealing with cancer, also high in copper. So something to pay attention to.
I did not know that. Okay.
All right, let's talk about alkalinity, because I think the alkaline conversation happens quite a bit around juicing.
Yes.
I hear a lot of people say things like cancer hates an alkaline environment or cancer loves an acidic environment. And the truth is, your pH is actually really tightly controlled in your body. It's a homeostatic control. So the lungs are involved, the kidneys are involved. Your body has buffering systems to create those mechanisms, oftentimes pulling calcium in and out of the blood from your bones to balance that pH. But what people don't realize is this whole idea around alkalinity and acidity comes because the tumors themselves, the cancer cells, as they proliferate, they produce lactic acid as a byproduct when they ferment glucose. And so the cancer environment itself is acidic. That's different from the body's environment being alkaline or acidic. So your body will control all of that. So it's not the case, unfortunately, that we can take an alkaline element and just infuse it directly into the cancer cells at home using juice. So this is actually a myth. Alkalinity is not something we can control much at home. And so I just wanted to put that to rest.
Are you saying, Heather, that the whole conversation about alkalinity and acidity, they we don't have very much control over that? That's
Correct.
exactly what you're saying. So all
Yes.
of the information out there about changing your pH and whatnot and testing your pH, we really cannot do very much by way of that.
Not really. Your urine pH, you might be able to shift if you're using a dipstick in your urine, but your blood pH and the rest of the body, you don't have any control over that because the body handles it
I think that
automatically.
was huge. There's another takeaway. Okay.
And this is a big deal. I see a lot of one of my clients are drinking alkaline water
Ugh.
by the gallons. And this is where we have to have a conversation because if you drink alkaline water, your stomach acid gets diluted. And now we run into an issue where you can't cleave your nutrients correctly because you don't have enough stomach acid. Also, you're left open and vulnerable to pathogens and bugs and things. Part of what our stomach does is sanitize our food. So be
Wow.
very careful with this alkaline concept.
Okay.
I would be remiss if we didn't talk about celery juice in this conversation.
I need to know about celery juice because this is like all the rage. Diuretic and it's supposed to anti-inflammatory. Tell us.
Yeah. The biggest thing that people don't realize with celery is that it can impair the CYP450 enzyme,
I don't
just
even know
like
what that is.
grapefruit juice can. So a lot of people who are taking chemotherapy or targeted drugs or some of these know about the grapefruit effect. And so CYP450 is an enzyme that runs through the liver in terms of the way you metabolize medications.
Okay.
And celery juice, just like grapefruit, can actually interrupt this signaling. So if you're on medication, it can either make the medication not work as well or create a situation where it feels like a larger dose, like a concentrated dose. Like it gets backed up and it's not metabolizing like it should. And so your side effect profile from the medications can increase.
Wow.
It can impair phase one detox, which is where things become water soluble so that we can keep them out. And so you may feel really good. I have had probably 4 or 5 clients now come to me doing celery juice. And they're like, I felt so good the first 3 days. And then I just felt like crap. It's because you end up with a backlog of toxins. And so eventually you crash.
Oh,
And if your genetics are such where you already have SNPs, single nucleotide polymorphisms, just genetic mutations around detoxification, it can make this even stronger in you. So you
wow.
got to be careful. So the claim from, and this is typically the medical medium, and you may be of the opinion that he's above all of this, and so he's got extra information, which could be, I don't know. But they talk about undiscovered sodium cluster salts that heal the body. There's no evidence of these in the medical literature, so we may discover them later. Like you said, things are always moving. It also claims to detoxify the blood through the liver. We already talked about that. If you have the wrong genetics, it may not. It's also, they talk about rebuilding the digestive tract and restoring stomach acid. There's no evidence of that. In fact, you can actually throw things out of balance because have you drank celery juice? It's so salty.
It is really salty, and I ran into a little bit of a problem when I was doing a subscription. I was drinking all greens, and I didn't know what was going on because I'm not a meat eater, and I my big toe was hurting. It was like mimicking
Oh,
the signs of
gout.
high uric acid. I was gout,
Mhm.
and there was no way that I could have had, but it looked like that. So I'm listening very closely, and you're right. That's tough.
I'm very curious. I wonder if it's an oxalates or something that we're going to talk about.
That's what it was. Yeah.
Okay, we're going
Yeah.
to get there. Celery does have some good stuff. Celery's not a bad vegetable. I love celery. I love pickled celery. So
Yeah.
good. But
Whole Foods.
in juice form, you can have just too much salt. So
Yeah.
if you have hypertension, high blood pressure, if you
Yeah.
have kidney issues, if you have any of these things, it can make those things worse. So be careful there. Also, if you're not getting enough liquid in general, or you're just dehydrated, doing a ton of celery juice with all that salt can cause your body to hold on to all kinds of moisture in the muscles, but you feel really thirsty. So it can really mess up your fluid balance if you're not careful. Also, it can sensitize you to the sun. So celery has something called a sorellin, and if you get those in concentrated amounts, it can make you more susceptible to UV damage in the sun, like bad sunburns. So be careful there. And yes, there's the oxalates, 16 ounces a day. It's a pretty significant oxalate load, especially if you have any kidney issues or reduced detox capacity. And if you're going through things like chemotherapy or even IVC or some of these other things, that's a lot for the kidney and the liver and the kidneys to process. So be mindful, be mindful.
Yeah.
Be mindful. All right, let's talk about genes for a minute. One big gene that people are always surprised to hear about is BCM01. This is the gene that codes for the enzyme that allows you to convert beta carotene to vitamin A. When people say things like, there's so much vitamin A in carrots, it's actually a false statement. There's a ton of beta carotene in carrots, but we have to convert it to vitamin A, which is retinol, which is actually what the immune system uses. So for people like me, when I eat too many carrots, I literally turn orange. The palms of my hands. Wow. I don't know what it was. In junior high school, there was like a carrot stick phenomenon. I think it was like a dieting thing. So I ate all the carrots I could find, and the palms of my hands and the bottoms of my feet turned orange because I cannot convert beta carotene to vitamin A. And so it just makes me look like I walked out of Willy Wonka's factory as a staff member. So that's really important. So if we think about Gerson for a sec, 238 grams of sugar in 10 to 13 glasses of carrot juice, no vitamin A or beta carotene benefit. Man, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So the carrot juice specifically is a question mark unless you understand your genetics. Drug metabolism is another one. We just talked about this with the celery juice. So if you have these two SNPs, CYP3A4 or CYP1A2, these are genes that encode for the enzymes that help you metabolize medications. And so if you're one of the folks that has a little bit of a compromised detox pathway, all that celery juice can get you, and it can cause interruptions or issues with any of your medications. So heads up and be careful there. About 40% of the population has MTHFR SNPs. That one a lot of people are familiar with. This has to do with how your body uses folate and sometimes B12. And so if you have MTHFR, the type of folate from vegetables may not be the best for you in terms of being able to actually absorb it and process it. And then there's also the glycemic response. There are genetics that help us be a little bit more sensitive to insulin resistance. So TCF7L1, ACSL1, these are genes that leave us a little bit more predisposed to insulin resistance. So adding a lot of carrot and apple, we want to be careful. I'm sure you guys are getting the picture now. If we're going to juice with stuff that doesn't taste good. It's got to taste like grass. It's got to taste bitter. There's also SNPs around glutathione. This is another detoxification capacity. So if you're not growing your own vegetables in your backyard, that concentration of chemicals and pesticides can be very problematic. And then there's also your gut bacteria are responsible for creating B12 or absorbing B12. So if you have these three SNPs, FUT2, MTRR, TCN2, there's a few others, then you may not have you may be genetically vulnerable to not have the type of bugs in your gut that can help you convert or absorb B12.
Heather, I think this slide in general is probably overwhelming and would be, but I think that for me as a more of a layman, I think that what I'm going to take away from this slide, and I hope that our listeners do as well, is this is a good, really good argument for if you are on the cancering journey to have somebody, to work with somebody like you who can actually go very specific, right? Because how are we to know? We wouldn't know any of this. And so to not overwhelm the conversation, these are examples of what could possibly be an interference using something like juice. Am I
Yep,
correct?
absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it's actually a little bit comforting to folks who think they should be juicing, but they
Yeah.
couldn't tolerate it.
Agreed. Agreed.
This may be why. You're just not built for it.
Yeah. Okay, so listen, we only have a few moments. Let's talk about where we can go. Actually, I want to stop there because I just saw the next slide. Don't go there yet. Go here first, please.
Real quick,
Yeah.
though, these are the plant's defense mechanisms. So oxalates, phytates, lectins, the, these are the things that can be problematic.
Yes.
And there's ways that we can address them. So whole foods, again, fermentation, like pair them together, rotate, cook them in
Oh.
fat, all of these things.
Can we, when they are watching this back, this is a really important one because I love the research, but I also like what you do in terms of, okay, now that we know what we're dealing with, this is how we do the workarounds, and that's this slide. But the bigger point too is, as you said earlier a couple of times, the whole food. And just to, again, opportunity, it's more food. You're going to be more satisfied. And then you're getting that whole profile. And then, oh, by the way, Heather's going to give us these hacks like cooking in fat and soaking and whatnot. I think this is awesome.
Yep, absolutely. We already talked about your concentrating whatever the plant absorbed. So there's your glyphosate and things, just keep it clean. I think we all are hip on the organic piece. Raw isn't always better. Some of the things like lycopene, for example, that's heavy in tomatoes, actually increases in bioavailability when it's heated. Light cooking helps with a lot of these things, including making proteins more digestible.
Nice.
So raw isn't always better. Now, sometimes it is. Vitamin C can be degraded, folate can be degraded or leached out. Sulforaphane is another really important one to think about. This is the most cancer protective that we have in the plant space, but it's not always just in juice because even when you're juicing, there's heat that is produced
Yes.
in the juicing. And so that can degrade it. So if you just drink the juice, maybe we missed out on some opportunity. But
Yeah.
if you chop the brassica like broccoli, let it sit for a minute and then lightly steam it and then add mustard seed to it, you get much bigger bang for your buck in terms of the sulforaphane picture. So
But
whole foods and combine them. Good stuff. Also, we have to consider today's produce is not grandma's produce.
that's true.
So if you look up what a carrot used to look like, it used to have 1 to 2 grams of sugar and it was like this little bitter white root. And now there are these big giant orange things and there's 6 grams of sugar per carrot. So think about that. We all know about soil depletion, or at least we hear about it. We also hear about intentional breeding of sugar, like oranges. Do you know that oranges used to be green and not orange? We actually bred them to be orange.
I did not.
I learned that the other day. I was blown away.
I have to say, in 3 years of doing the show, today might be one of a handful that have literally stumped me.
Oh,
It's not that I didn't know the bigger picture, but this like really drilling into it, not only does it make so much sense, but I'm like, I did not know so much of what you are sharing. This is unbelievable.
it's a lot of information. That's why I put so much text on the slides so you guys can read all the details later.
So I know we only have a few moments, but let me just say this. I'm going to use myself as a little case study here for our listeners. I told you my issue with the
Your
heavy
toe.
diet, the keto juice with the kale and the spinach and everything green and the lowest amount of sugar possible. So my workaround is I'm a huge advocate for whole foods. Eat the whole food, eat as clean as possible, closest to the ground, organic and whatnot. So the way I have justified the juicing thing in my mind is, let's use your celery juice as an example. And when I make a smoothie to get all the fiber and whatnot, I will use something like an organic celery juice as the base as opposed to, or filtered water. I'm
Sure.
not asking if that's right or wrong. I'm saying, is that a possibility to, like you said, stack? Because
Yeah.
for me now, it's like, I'm not going to miss the opportunity for the fiber. right? And now that everything
Sure.
that you're sharing, apparently I'm not missing something else too. So is that a possibility for somebody who does
Yeah.
enjoy a cold pressed juice? Okay. All right.
Yeah, you absolutely can. You absolutely can. And hydration is actually super, super important because sometimes when people are reaching for juice, they really just need water and electrolytes.
Yes.
So if you're making a smoothie and you're keeping all of your fiber,
Yeah.
then you're also getting your hydration in that respect as well. And it's not, if you're bypassing the sugar entirely. If you're vegan, there's some special considerations for you around which nutrients you can and cannot get from your vegan diet, and juicing can compound these. A couple more slides and we'll get to the hacks.
Yes.
Your immune system, the gut, we already went through all of this.
Yes.
And then there's a few use cases. So these are important. So post-surgical recovery, juices can be used to help get things like vitamin C and these types of things into the
Nice.
system post-surgery. If you're having significant GI dysfunction, sometimes solid foods are not tolerable. This is where juices can become in handy. If you have severe mucositis, sometimes these things can be helpful here too. And this is where I may use a little bit of celery juice to make sure we're getting enough salt when solid foods either hurt the mouth or hurt the GI tract, or if we need to
I think
go
this
in
is
with
a
a
really good,
targeted phytonutrient.
I think this is a really good slide too. Again, when my brother was on the colon cancer journey, at a certain point during the journey, he did have a bag. And
Yeah.
some of those smaller, there were things that he definitely could not break down. And so the juice situation, I mean, we knew about carrot and beet being high in sugar, but the green juice,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, as you mentioned, I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. Can the juice be the bridge, not the protocol,
Yeah.
for instead of doing something, I'm exaggerating, but the green juice as opposed to a soda or
Yeah.
a red Gatorade? Not to pick
Yes.
on our Gatorade friends, but
Yes.
it is a better choice. It's not the choice.
Yeah. It is a better choice. And sometimes it's a more absorbable choice if
Yeah,
the anatomy has been changed,
right.
particularly with stomas
Yeah.
and bowel changes.
Oh my gosh,
All right.
Heather,
If you're being called to juice, this is how I would do it. Make sure it's always organic, like non-negotiable, as clean
yeah.
as you can source. Vegetables only. So avoid apples, carrots, beets, pineapples, oranges. Those are just the sugar delivery devices. If you're buying commercial juices, even if they're cold pressed, read the ingredients,
Yes.
not just the carb count, the ingredients. And then best bases are going to be things like watercress, fresh herbs like parsley, escarole, arugula. You see my little bitter face there.
Yeah.
These are things that are going to taste
And
different.
I'll say it. You're not saying it. I'll say it because it tastes like the grass. It tastes like grass. This is not this an enjoyable moment for some people like it, but it's not the juice. The juicing got a bad rep. Juicing was not supposed to be this liquid
Right.
lollipop. It's
Right.
not. And so this is amazing. Please, listeners, believe biggers. Wait, this is the slide. This is the
Yes.
slide. If you're gonna do the juicing thing, these are really six really important things to consider
I
as you
want to
make the
call
decision.
out the size, the portion. So
Yes,
when I come across people who are juicing, we're drinking juice all day long. They're making huge batches in the morning and they're sipping on it all day. Well, if we concentrate with the food choices and then make it small, like 4 to 6 ounces, and then drink that juice after we've eaten a meal that has actual veggie fiber and fat and protein,
yeah,
we're reducing the hit to the blood sugar, still getting that concentrated hit of nutrients, not messing up and creating cravings. I get people all the time, I'm so hungry. Well,
yes.
when you have just juice or that sugar from juice, yeah,
Oh my
absolutely.
goodness, Heather, this was
And then
wonderful.
rotate your greens, rotate them to reduce the oxalate burden because a lot of people have
I don't see
sensitivity to
those
oxalate.
items on the menu board at the local juice place.
Oh, sure.
Listen, wait, don't be mad at Heather and I for delivering the news, but this is something to consider.
Yep. And then listen to your gut.
Yeah.
If you start bloating, if you start cramping, if you start getting snotty and sneezy, sometimes oxalates and things can kick up histamine issues. Pay attention to your poops. If they're moving like they're supposed to, if they're increasing in loose stools, be careful there. And then modify.
Yeah.
So be careful. I've got more slides. Do we have more time?
Let's pick one more because I want to give us a chance to wrap up.
One more.
One more good one. And of course,
All
we
right.
will. Oh, there we go.
Let's do, so this is going to go through all the things we already talked about, but a practical reframe. So maybe instead of a daily juice, maybe we shoot for 9 cups of diverse organic veggies, lightly cooked in fat, right? And they taste good. Maybe you put butter on. It's like grass-fed finished
Yeah.
butter on a
Oh,
piece of
yes.
broccoli, some
Yes.
salt. Yum.
Wonderful. Yeah. Agreed.
Maybe include celery in your food instead of juicing. Maybe have a bowl of berries with some coconut cream or some sunflower seeds as a dessert instead of a big fruit smoothie. And then, of course, filtered water instead of the alkaline water. So
I
here's a few more resources. You can go deep. And oh, I think my slide is messed up. I'll fix it. But
no, no.
all the
It's
literature is in here for you guys.
you are unbelievable. Really, this is like I don't know. I'm going to say this. If you are somebody, all of our oncology nutritionists are amazing, and any one of our ladies would be just divine to work with. I can't help but add Heather to that list as well and just say this. It is a slippery slope when you are on this journey, and I say this each and every time, it is the full-time job that you did not apply to, and then this nutrition piece is you got to eat, and then you end up being confused. So
Yeah.
for our listeners, you have your pick of whomever you'd like to work with. But if Heather's information is resonating with you, I highly recommend you check out her website, Soil to Soul Nutrition. You are an incredible wealth of knowledge, just like our other co-hosts on our show. But Heather's newer to our show, and I just want to invite all of us to really pay close attention to the fact that what I really appreciate in our past 2 episodes together, Heather, is that you bring us the facts. And the facts are the facts, and how we choose to interpret them, that is, we are the pilot of our journey. We'd not say the period at the end of the sentence, don't ever have another juice. Heather gave us great workarounds, but I do think it's worth mentioning. Both Heather and I said before we got on, juicing is not our favorite. It's not our go-to. It's not something that it's one of the 6 that she just discussed, and for all the reasons that she just shared with us. So if you'd like to have more information, you forget Soil to Soul Nutrition, you can feel free to reach out to me, Stacy at believebig.org. And I will put you in direct contact with Heather. Heather, I can't wait for round number 3. You teach me something new and exciting each and every time. But I do have to say, and I mean it, so seldom am I clamped down for, oh my gosh, I did not know some of this. And I really appreciate knowing it now. So thank you.
Yeah. Everything is individual. Gotta
Yes.
dig in.
Yeah, you're amazing. I hope you have a lovely day. And for our folks that watch each and every time, we just want you to know that we love you very much, that we're praying up for you, and that we are here for you every step of the way. And we look forward to hearing from you off the show. Feel free to reach out. That's what we're here for. And we'll see you the next time. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
See you soon.